This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. Today is Therapy Day with our friend Kim Har, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. Today's topic addresses the importance of living intentionally. More specifically, creating a life filled with margin. At this time, let's welcome back our friend, Kim Har.
Hi, David. It's so good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you back on the air waves of Oasis Radio Network, and I am pretty passionate about this topic. I want to ask you all about it, but first, I need to be a gentleman and ask you about you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
All right. We like to open our shows with a hearty har story, seeing as your last name is Har, H-A-A-R. And so what is new in the Har household?
I know, no pressure, right? I'm always thinking, what can my hearty har story be? You know, I actually last week, maybe about 7-8 days ago, I took a trip to California. And I went with my youngest daughter, and while I was there, I got to watch her take her first surfing lesson. And I was standing on the side. The water was freezing. She was in a wetsuit, and so I was on the side, and I had to kind of smile and laugh because I don't think as a mom, no matter the age of your kids, you really never stop being a mom. And so for an hour and a half, I'm holding my phone, and I am videotaping her with her surfing lesson because I know at some point she's going to stand up. And so for an hour and a half, here's the mom, and I am videoing her, and I did get the pictures. But it was kind of funny. On my way back on the airplane, I sat by a man, and I'm always interested when I sit by people, you know, kind of what's their story. And he was a film editor from California. He had actually just bought some land, I want to say in Tennessee, because he was trying to kind of create some space in his life from the busyness. But he had been a film editor for 12 years on the movie Star Trek and the TV show Star Trek. So it was really an interesting conversation, and it tickled me because he was asking me things about, he was trying to show me pictures, and he couldn't find any of them. So I ended up showing him how to use his pictures and how to create albums, and he was saying how knowledgeable I was on my phone. And I couldn't help but giggle because my daughter beside me thinks I don't know anything about my phone. So it was just kind of a really interesting trip and met really cool people and got to watch surfing.
Well, they call it a side hustle when you make money doing something else besides your full-time job. And so this could be a good side hustle for you, Kim, helping the rest of us who are cell phone challenged. I'll tell you what, my desktop, I think that's what it's called on the cell phone, where all the apps are.
Yes.
It's a hot mess.
I thought it was called the home screen.
Well, home screen. Okay.
I thought
you.
Desktop is what your computer is.
How much do I owe you for that information?
I know. Mr. Valedictorian.
Okay. Turnabout is fair play, right?
I couldn't help it.
Well, I'll tell you what. You could really help me with my cell phone at this point.
You know, I can't. I mean, I am really illiterate when it comes to the cell phone. I just happen to know a little bit more than he was, but it was like the blind leading the blind.
Well, everybody make sure that you have the Oasis Radio Network app on your phone because you can take us with
That's
you
right.
anywhere you go in the world. And so there is a free app for those who carry iPhones, and there's a free app for those who carry Androids.
Well, and I have to say, the man that I sat by on the airplane, I told him about the Oasis Network app because he was asking me about where he could listen to some of, you know, the things that we had talked about therapy, because I was telling him I do some tapings on the Oasis Network. And so I was very proud. I was telling him how to get to the Oasis Network app. And so if he's listening, you found it.
Well, I alluded to the fact that today's topic is something that I'm very interested in because my life, well, when I say life, I don't know that I mean my ability to breathe, but my social life, my emotional life, my spiritual life. It really depends on this topic of having enough time in my schedule to put attention and give attention to all these different areas. Would you give us an overview of what we will be discussing when we come back from the first break?
Sure. I think that we are so full of putting things into our schedule. You use the word time. Is that the very common thing people say is, I don't have time. And, I send you notes. One of the introduction that I gave you, I'd like to read it if I can. And it says, imagine driving on a highway where every car is going 85 miles an hour with just inches between them. One small mistake, one unexpected brake light, and the whole system crashes. That's how many of us are living our lives today, at maximum speed with zero room for margin. Most people don't realize when they've crossed from margin to overload. It sneaks up on us. We begin to live out of balance, ignoring our natural God-given limits. When God created the world, he modeled rest. On the seventh day, he rested, not because he needed to, but to show us how to live. When we ignore that example, it leads to exhaustion and burnout.
All right, that's today's topic, well-needed, much-needed topic for probably all those listening to Kim Har and David Warren today, who will be right back after this. I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. Our topic today is intentional living, subtitled Creating a Life Filled with Margin. And here to help us is our resident therapist. And this would be a good time to just mention how studied or learned you are in the area of therapy. So remind our listeners how long you have been doing this and really what it took to get to where you are today.
Sure. I have actually been a licensed therapist for close to 18 years now. And in order for me to get my licenses, because I have two different licenses, one of them required 2,000 hours and one required 3,000 hours. And so there was a lot of book learning that went into that, a lot of practicing, a lot of being under the supervision of a licensed therapist. So it took a lot of years and a lot of practice.
Okay. I love today's topic. Again, it is intentional living, creating a life filled with margin. So let's start with the first part of that title, intentional living. What does that mean to you?
Sure. Intentional living is a conscious choice. It's a deliberate choice that aligns with my core values, my goals, and what truly matters to me. Too often, if we're not intentional, life happens to us. And being intentional is when we are actually being very conscious and deliberate about our decisions and how we fashion our lives.
Okay. So let's talk about the second half of the title of today's topic, Creating a Life Filled with Margin. What is the tie between intentionality and margin?
Well, intentionality and margin are very, very closely connected. Intentionality is when I'm being intentional about things like my commitments, it naturally is going to create margin and more space in my life.
Question. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a matter of ownership? Meaning margin, I have to be intentional about it. I have to own that is my responsibility.
I do. I like to use the example of, most people know how to use Microsoft Word. And when you're going in and you're creating a document, a lot of times, we've got so much we want to fit on the page that we may go into the design area and it'll say, do you want to change your margins? And it will ask you, do you want narrow margins? Do you want wide margins? And too often we select the narrow margins, but we still want to put things on this piece of paper. So then we go in and we manipulate the space between the lines or the space between the paragraphs. And we are putting so much into are, we don't have any margins. There is no white space. We are just so full. So it is about being very deliberate and taking ownership and not just kind of saying whatever hits me is going to stick.
All right. Well, margin is kind of a broad term, so let's unpack what that word means in light of what we were discussing today, of creating a better life with more room for the things that we want to do and feel we're called to do.
Sure. Margin is having a buffer space in our schedule so that it allows us to actually make thoughtful decisions. I can think through things. I can give something my attention, and I'm not having to knee-jerk quickly make a decision. It gives us mental and emotional margin. When we do that, we give ourselves clarity so that the decisions that I make, actually, I can ask myself, are they aligning with the things I say are important to me? Financial margin is going to reduce the pressure to make rushed or compromised decisions. If I have financial margin, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. And then when I give myself the margin, it's space between activities. So it may be just space in between my tasks where I build in extra time, and it allows me to have, I can evaluate things, I can adjust things, and I'm not quite so rushed.
Okay, we're going to paint some pictures now. I have an advanced copy of the notes here, and I want to see I want you to see, listening, where you fit into this picture. Which one of these describes you? And so, Kim, I want you to give some examples of marginless living, and we will fit into probably at least one or two of these descriptions. And so you're going to know you need some help, which you're going to get from Kim here in just a bit. But if you fit into any of these or multiples, you need to stay tuned to this roadshow.
All right, some examples of when we don't have margin is we've got overloaded schedules. We may wake up and we're already behind because we haven't built in any time. We're rushing from one commitment to another. We're always in a hurry. We collapse in bed at night exhausted, only to start it all over again the next day. Without margins, we don't have a balance between our work and our home life. Work kind of bleeds over into our home life, and that may look like I'm constantly checking my emails. And this is where our cell phones really kind of help us lose margin because it's so easy to pull up, well, I'm just going to check an email or I'm just going to check a text. And so we may do things like answering emails during dinner. It may be taking a phone call when we're supposed to be having family time. And so there's really no time to actually disconnect. Financial overcommitment is marginless living, and that is, like I said earlier, we're living paycheck to paycheck. We don't have any financial buffer, so everything feels like an emergency, and there's no room for unexpected expenses. That's where I like referring to something Dave Ramsey says, and he will talk about tell your money where to go, or else it will tell you where it's going to go. And so when we've got no margin, it just feels like we're sometimes going from crisis to crisis.
Okay.
There's also emotional overwhelm. If somebody is feeling, man, I'm feeling empty, I'm feeling irritable, frustrated, maybe I'm on edge because I'm constantly running on empty and I'm not filling my own tank. My relationships are going to be strained. Again, if I'm irritable, it's going to affect my relationships, but I may not be able to have quality time with the people that are really important to me.
One of the things I'm going to want you to help me with as you're triggering me in talking here is I think I have too many hard pushes on my schedule throughout the day. I mean, every once in a while, I feel like I can exhale.
Right.
And like, oh, okay, I've got plenty of time to get my work done. But most of the time, I feel like I have to double time it to get my work done.
Right.
So I know I need some help.
Sure. Well, and I think sometimes we make everything urgent and top priority. And that's one of those things that everything can't be top priority. It's kind of like we've got a have-to basket, we have a need-to basket, and a want-to basket. And we try and shove everything into that have-to basket.
Okay.
So another one is just we get physically exhausted without margins because we may be rushed. So we're doing things like we're skipping meals. We may be losing sleep. We don't have time to exercise. And I think that that's a real trigger is when you hear yourself in your mind using the words, I don't have time. Man, I wish I could do that, but I don't have time. That's going to be a red flag. Okay, do I need to make time? Because time doesn't just happen. Then there's also just that mental clutter. And, when you're talking about even being at work and having, sometimes there's all these to-do lists in our mind, it's almost like the screens that are running on our computer. We've got all these tabs open, and we may not be focusing on any one of them, but it's still taking all of our energy. And so that's our never-ending to-do lists. And we can't focus on just being present.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you might be at lunch with someone, even right now, if that's the time of day you're listening. And, of course, you're not eating lunch with someone if you're listening to us probably. But
we hope not.
where you're already into your afternoon to-dos.
Right. Yeah.
Even during this program right now,
yep.
I am intentionally not thinking about what I need to do right after this.
Right.
Because there are a lot of things waiting for me when we say goodbye here in a few minutes. So, it's a struggle sometimes.
Sure. Well, and I think that's when I say it sneaks up on us. It's not that we're bad people. It's really just more we have to be intentional not to let that happen, because we don't have to try real hard to let marginless living happen in our lives. We have to really work hard to keep the margin, because marginless will come.
How do you help your clients stay focused?
You mean in session when we're talking, or when?
Either stay focused then, or help them live a life of staying focused on a more regular basis?
Well, I think there's two answers to that. I think that there will always be, you can tell a client that comes in that maybe is there for session 10 or 15 minutes early, that wants to sit in the waiting room just to decompress, just to kind of shift their mind that they're doing something different, versus a client that comes in 1 minute late that's, throwing their phone into their bag, or they're, oh man, I'm so sorry, I just came from this. And there's like an energy and a pressure that people carry. And so one of the things sometimes is, okay, let's just stop and breathe for a minute. Let's just put phones away. Let's just dedicate and be very intentional about this hour that they spend with me is going to be very focused on specifically what they need. But it takes practice.
You have given me some advanced notes here, and I found these stats really interesting about the reality of the modern life which most of us lead. We've mentioned cell phones more than once during this hour, and did you know, listener, that the average American checks their phone? I find this hard to believe, but maybe it is true. I guess it is true. Okay, how many times a day? I'll ask our sound guy. Now, sound guy, Tim Maroney, you're going to need to, and I see you checking your phone a lot, so I believe it in your case. So how many times a day do you think you check your phone?
I don't know the number.
Doesn't know the number.
Time-wise, it averages about an hour to an hour and a half.
Hour to an hour and a half, like overall. You think it does?
Screen time.
Okay, your screen time.
You get that report every week.
Right. But checking your phone can be just seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So,
of course,
take a wild guess.
It's part of my job.
All right, I know it's part of your job.
Yeah.
Take a wild guess. How many times, whether part of your job or not part of your job, you check your cell phone?
Oh, I'm going to say at least 40 or 50 times a day.
He thinks it's at least 40 or 50 times a day he checks his cell phone. Kim, what is the average amount of times that an American checks his or her cell phone?
That's right. The statistics that I came on was the average American checks their phone 344 times a day. And that may just be picking it up to see, oh, is anybody texting me? It may be, is that little bubble, do I have any emails? And it can become very habit. And so that's what we're doing.
And you have mentioned just a few moments ago that classifies as mental clutter.
It does. Well, because our mind is going to, I'm already thinking about, does somebody need me? Is somebody trying to reach me?
So that can ramp up someone's anxiety.
It can. And a sense of obligation. A sense of, it's like, hey, I don't want to miss anything. So it can be, hey, I don't want to miss out on anything. It can be, what if somebody needs me? So it can be for a number of reasons.
All right. Some other reality checks here of us modern livers, I guess. Weird word. Remote work has increased working hours by 2.5 hours per day for many.
That's right.
And I would have to say, listeners, when yours truly gets up, he probably does, I'm going to say at least an hour for Oasis before I even start getting ready and doing the things I need to do to come into the office. So
Right.
that tracks with me. And then when I get home, I'm usually checking things one final time for about a half an hour or so. I'm not probably as bad as this, but I'm getting close to that. So that tracks. 77% of employees report experiencing burnout.
Right.
And we're going to attribute that to lack of margins, which
Lack of margins.
we're discussing today.
Lack of boundaries.
And the boundary between work and home has become increasingly blurred.
Right.
I know that's true. I do that.
Well, I even, I've got an example because my son works for a company and they're like a family, a good family culture. It's not family, but he will come to my house for family time and his phone will ding all evening and he will say, well, it's just the people from work. Well, it's just the people from work. They were just asking this question. We'll give you 5 minutes so I can answer this. And it sneaks up on us.
Well, and you know that somebody else's lack of margin bleeds oftentimes into mine or your lack of margin.
It does. It does. It's a sign of respect for ourselves and it's a sign of respect for other people because, yes, that lack of margin, if I have lack of margin and you're waiting on me for something, okay, it's going to maybe move your margin, and so we're connected.
All right. So most of us can say we're living a life with less margin than we would like.
Right.
That are tuned in to this program. So before we take a break, tell us how we got here. How did it become this bad that we need your help?
Well, I think it sneaks up on us. I don't think it is an intentional. Anybody just says, hey, I don't want any margin. I don't want downtime. I think it's something that sneaks up on us. And everybody's threshold is different. So it differs from person to person.
Good point.
It's not like a cookie cutter answer. One of the things is we feel obligated to say yes to everything. And a lot of times we're saying yes to good things, but what it does is it makes it where we can't say yes to the best things. So one is we feel committed. We overcommit ourselves. We treat everything as urgent. I said we need a have to, a need to, and a want to basket, and we try and put everything as urgent. Another thing is we can't compare ourselves to others, and we want to keep up. If somebody's doing something more than us, we can even subconsciously put this on ourselves as, well, I need to do that too. And then because we ignore our body signs, our body really, God gave it to us like a GPS.
Does our body keep the score?
It keeps the score. GPS is God's protective system. It may be our body wears down, we're tired, our body may ache. So we need to be listening to that because God gave it to us, as a protective system.
I should give credit there to, that's a very
Bessel van der Kolk.
That's a very popular book, by the way.
That's right. It's called The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And, lastly, I think what we do is we treat our lives like a buffet plate. And we go to the buffet and everything looks good. And so we just heap these large portions on and then we heap on top. And so we've got these mounded plates, but we don't have room for it. And so what we need to do is look at what is that most important. What's my favorite? If I'm at a buffet, what's my favorite food? And that's the one that's going to go on first. So there's no chance I'm not going to get to my favorite.
That's why they put all that iceberg lettuce at the front of a buffet line, so you fill your plate up too early. And
That's right.
And don't have room for the good stuff. And we want to make room for the good stuff.
Go for the good stuff.
Go for the good stuff. Okay. Well, that's the problem. Most of us are identifying with the problem. And when we come back, practical steps to overcome the problem of marginless living. Kim Har and David Warren will be right back.
The Road Show is a listener favorite which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Road Show also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup and contact information, and links to our Roadshow sponsors and its host. So join us for the Roadshow, whether on your radio, computer, or mobile device at oasisnetwork.org.
And we're back. Tim Roney has put his cell phone down, our sound man, who's doing a great job. And I think he was quite surprised that the average American checks his or her cell phone 344 times a day, Kim Har.
I know, but I do have to say, it's pretty good. When you said your average screen time was like an hour and a half, That's actually really low compared to the average American.
Okay, that's Kim talking to Soundman Tim Roney. I'm David Warren, your host on today's Road Show, and our topic today is intentional living, knowing that we're going to have to do something on purpose.
That's right.
To create a life filled with margin.
Mm-hmm. We have to make some choices.
We have to make some choices, so let's dive on in. Help us out, Kim.
All right, so some practical steps to create margin in your life. The first thing is we need to reassess where are we at now. We need to be asking ourselves some questions like, do I have breathing room or am I rushing from one thing to the next? Do I feel like life is just happening to me or am I happening to life? I think identifying the root causes of if I am busy all the time and there's no margin, what is the reason for that? Mm-hmm. Is it that I'm overcommitting and I need some boundaries? I need to learn to say no. Is it that I'm people-pleasing? I don't want to let others down?
See, you make a good point. Am I creating my own overwhelm?
Right. Well, and why? What is the cause? Because we want to go to the root cause. Because if we can see the root cause, then we can make a plan. Is it that I'm afraid of missing out of something? Is it that I am comparing myself to others? Is it I'm a perfectionist? And that's actually one of mine, is when I recognize I spend too much time on something, it's because to me, it has to be perfect. And so I have to be able to tell myself, you know what, sometimes good enough is good enough.
So that personal issue of perfectionism
right.
took away time from something else that you would have liked to have done or needed to be done in your life.
And it puts pressure. It steals time. And so I think being able to recognize, okay, what is the reason? What's my reason? And I think all of us are guilty of letting margins slip away. So I think it's just being very more intentional about, okay, let me figure out me so that I can make a plan for it.
So we're going to have to learn how to say no to ourselves
yes.
or no to those around us.
No to others.
And I'm going to have you help us with that before we say goodbye.
We are our biggest boundary breaker. We are the ones that take our margin away more than others taking our margin away.
I believe that.
And so I think if we can work, but that's good news because I have 100% control over me. I have 0% control over you. So that means it's in my control to change my margin. So after you reassess, where are you? Then there's a part of reprioritizing and ask yourself, okay, what is it that really matters to me? And come up with your top 5 things that are really, really important to you. But then ask yourself, okay, so if this is really what's important to me, if I look at my calendar, my checkbook, does my actions reflect that? If people say my faith is the most important thing to me, okay, my question is, okay, so how do you walk that out? How is that evident in your life? What are the practical steps? If your family is the most important, okay, so tell me about the time you spend with them. Tell me how you're investing in them. So it's really letting our actions line up with our words. Ask yourself, where do I feel like I need more margin? Do I need it in the mornings, when I get up before I start my day? Do I need it in between tasks during the day? Do I need it in the evening? Do I need more margin on weekends? So again, look specifically at your life and ask yourself, okay, where do I need it? Where do I need to focus on it? And then realize that when we let go of things that don't align with our values and what God has called us to do, it's kind of giving ourselves permission that I'm going to maybe let something go because in this season, it's not as important to me. Mm-hmm. I've got a great example of that. I am in a very busy season of life right now. I'm getting ready to release a book, and one of the things that's important to me in my life is mentoring others. And I am a supervisor of new therapists that are graduating from college with their master's degrees, and they're learning to do therapy. And so they contract with me where I supervise all of their work for 2 years. And I know the time investment. I know what it's going to take of me. And in this season, I had to be okay with saying, yes, that's very important to me. But in this season, I can't do that.
You had to choose the better thing, which was to write a book.
I did.
Which can help even more people.
Well, and because when I look at whatever it is that I want to do, I want to give it my all. And I can't give my all to everything. And that's okay. So, sometimes we think margin takes time away from us, but really what it does is it gives time back to us. So after reprioritizing, the third one is regain control.
Okay, now before you go into this, because this is where the rubber meets the road. These are specific ways you can help us create more margin. I want to go ahead and interject that coming up in just a bit, we're going to tell you, now this isn't some gimmick, folks. This is true blue free. I mean, I'm free. It's something that you put a lot of time into. So knowing that you're trying to write a book and that you would spend extra time, because typically you create a PDF for most of our therapy sessions, which is free to our listeners who want basically an outline. I mean, it's kind of a fancy outline of what we discussed.
Sure.
That particular therapy session on the Roadshow. Well, you have gone above and beyond and created a workbook and implementation guide to intentional living, again, creating margin in our lives. So in case you're taking notes, you can kind of relax and exhale and just listen, but do have a pen and paper handy, because coming up shortly, we'll tell you how you can have this for free, and you just email this to them. Is that correct?
Okay. I do. They email me and I email them back.
Okay, and I want to ask you why you wanted to go beyond a PDF and turn this into a workbook, but let's save that for later. So we're talking about practical steps to creating margin in our lives, and step 3 is regaining control.
Right.
Now, this is where we're going to have some tough decisions, yes, but tough conversations with ourselves and with others. Now, you and I have role played before, so when we get to with others, I want to do a little role play, okay?
All right.
All right, here we go.
All right, so in regaining control, I think the first thing is stop attempting to maximize every minute of every day. People, many people I should say, they feel like it is a badge to say how busy they are. You'll say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm so busy. Or, man, I'm multitasking. And I think that we need to give ourselves permission not to do the multitasking and not trying to schedule every minute of every day. Then take back your calendar and align it with your priorities. Go back to those core values. What's really important to me? So if I'm saying faith and family, and obviously work is important, but how am I going to make sure and put that into my schedule so that I'm not just waiting to see where it can happen? I'm very intentionally going in and I'm making it happen. You can do that by time blocking. Go in and you time block, and, for me, there's a part of, time blocking. When is it that I want to make sure I can exercise? Because that can sometimes for me be, oh, I don't have time for it. Oh, I wanted to go for a walk, but I didn't. And that's really important because God made our bodies to be, He wants us to keep them healthy. So when is a time that I'm going to say, this is a time I can make it happen. I can be consistent, create a routine. So use time blocks. Then learn to say no, but learn to say no before you make a commitment. And sometimes that is just giving yourself the ability to just pause and say, let me get back to you. It's not saying yes. It's not having that immediate response, but it's actually being able to ask yourself, okay, does this align with my priorities?
Okay.
Do I have time in my schedule?
So let's pretend that I am a graduate student getting my master's degree in psychotherapy, and I hear that you are the best therapist that has ever existed,
Sure.
Kim Har.
Yeah.
And so I want you to mentor me. So, okay, Kim, in this season in your life, of course, I'm not going to say that,
Right.
but I'm asking you that. Will you take me on as...
Will you please?
Oh, please. You're the best, and I just love being around you, and I want to be your mentee. So what are you going to say?
I would probably respond with, you know what, there's nothing that I would actually love to do more because that's my heart. But right now in my schedule, I can't give the time that's needed to give you the best experience that you can have. So I would probably say, you know what, let me refer you to somebody else. Let me point you in a different direction. And I would also say how honored I am that you considered me.
Okay. How about a tougher one?
Okay.
All right. This is not pre-planned.
No, it's not.
Kim, my car is in the shop. I know you don't live that far from me, a couple miles, let's say. which I think you live farther than that from me. I don't really know. I've never been to your house. I think you have been to my apartment one time.
I have.
Do you mind picking me up and taking me home before and after work?
Okay. I would probably respond similar with, you know what, man, I wish I could.
First of all, you would think about it, right?
I would. I would think about it. Well, I think in this instance, because I know that I don't have the time in my schedule,
Okay.
and I've been practicing. But if I hadn't practiced, I think I would take just a pause. I wouldn't say, let me get back to you, unless you really need to. In that instance, I might just say, you know what? Again, hey, David, I wish I could, but because we live so far away, I can't get to my work on time if I stop and pick you up. I might offer, you know what, can I help you pay for an Uber? I may, again, I might just say, I wish I could, but I can't. And that right there is enough. I don't have to give bunches of reasons. And that goes into that people pleasing. Sometimes I feel like I have to earn the right to say no, and maybe I just don't want to.
And notice that you did not apologize.
No, because it's not my responsibility. It's not my obligation. And so I think that, especially if you struggle with people pleasing, I think practicing saying no, but thank you for asking, whether it is being able to say, I wish I could, but I can't.
And don't use the words, I'm sorry.
Right.
Why not? Tell people why they should not take that on.
Well, I think that it's not like you can't, because I could say, you know what, man, I'm really sorry because I can't, because I might really, really want to. But it's more, I'm not letting you down because I didn't have an obligation. If I said something to you and I committed to it, and if all of a sudden I can't follow my commitment,
Good point.
Then I can come back and say, you know, David, I said I was
sorry.
going to do this and I'm really sorry, but this is just more than I bargained for. And we just have to figure something different out.
And there's nothing wrong with going back. In fact, it's a sign of maturity to go back and say, I overcommitted.
Yes.
Please forgive me. I overcommitted as much as I would like to. The reality is I'm not able to.
Right. And I think that when you say that I overcommitted, you don't have to go into detail and say, well, because I'm, planning the road show and because I have to go and have this meeting and then I have to do these notes. And you don't have to go into deep explanation. You can just say, you know what, my commitment time, I just don't have the room right now. You can say, hey, feel free to ask me again at a different time.
We're talking about regaining control of our lives and really regaining control of our time, which our lives are made up of time.
Right. But no one person has more time
than another.
We all have the same amount of time, and we all are supposed to steward it. So the fourth thing is replenish yourself. Don't forget to fill your cup. Sometimes I think of that old song we used to sing, fill my cup, Lord, I lift it up, Lord. But I think it's fill my cup, Lord, but hurry up.
But hurry up, Lord.
That's right. And so there's a part of I can't give what I don't have. And so if I don't have, if I'm doing something and I don't have joy, that's going to be a really good sign that maybe I haven't filled that cup up, or I don't have that in my space to be giving that. So make sure that you're regularly filling your own cup, whether that is quiet time with the Lord, it may be a walk, it may be a cup of coffee, but what are you doing to fill your cup? And make sure that you make time for those things, because resting is not lazy. Resting is essential. And if we don't rest, we can't. It's like running on an empty tank of gas. I can't go.
I have a hard time sometimes finding the balance in the rest and the work, because resting is not bad.
Right.
But you can over-rest.
Right. That's about balance. And we can go balance on either way. We can do too much work and we can do too much rest. And so there's a part of what is a healthy balance. And I'm a big believer in using things like time blocking. Look at your schedule. Look at how much time you need for each of those. And know when you're resting or when you're replenishing yourself, start in those doses and say, okay, one is sometimes it may take 30 minutes just simply to kind of like unplug and just go for a break. It may be planning a lunch where you leave your office. you know what? That's a part of replenishing yourself. Where I go and I'm not having just a business lunch. It may be I'm going to go have a lunch and sit in a park.
Well, you and I have a mutual friend whose name I won't mention, but she is a ghostwriter. And now I'm just as guilty in my own right, okay? So I'm not pointing fingers here, and she probably will hear this program. But this person works on books when she gets up, and so that's going to about 7 p.m.,
Right.
works on Saturdays on them, works on Sundays on them. And because there's always that, I got to get this stuff done, feel.
Sure.
And so then the actions become kind of unstructured. And so you have mentioned something a couple of times called time blocking.
Right.
And this would probably be a good time for me to interject something that I do on my weekends. Because on David Warren's weekends, he's going to have laundry to do.
Right.
He's going to have an apartment to either pick up or clean up or both. He's going to have bills to pay. And he's going to need to get food in the pantry and in the refrigerator and in his mouth. So those are givens. And then there are the other things like that closet that's, overflowing with sweaters or shirts or whatever that need to be given away to the Goodwill, Salvation Army, things like that are not have to get done every week,
Right.
but need to be done. Or I need to schedule in an oil change for my car, and I can only do it on the weekend. So anyhow, all that to say, what I do on Saturday mornings is I go to my computer and I have already a pre-done document, and I just carry it over to the next week, and I assign which items I'm going to do on Saturday and which of those items I'm going to do on Sunday. And sometimes I will put an actual time frame, like
Right.
cleaning 60 minutes,
Sure.
bill pay 30 minutes, because you can keep adding things on your blocking, but if they take longer,
Right.
then you put a lot of long things that just turn your Saturday from 7A to 7P,
Right.
and you're going to start resenting on Monday that you didn't have a weekend.
Right.
So I write or type in what I'm going to do Saturday, what I'm going to do Sunday, and if needed, put a time assignment to that of how long I'm going to most likely be spending on that. And then when I feel like I have capped it for that day, to feel like that's getting into a full workday feel versus
Right.
a weekend day feel, then I'll stop it there, and I will have boundaries for
Right.
myself.
Right.
And then that way, when I'm done taking those off the list for that particular weekend day, that becomes I can do whatever I want to do. I can
Right.
take a nap. I can go out with friends. I can binge watch Netflix. I can do whatever I want to do.
Right.
And I need to do whatever I want to do at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I have found that works very well for me, because otherwise, and I'm going to point to my friend here, and I bring up our mutual friend,
Right.
is because she's like, now tell me about that thing you do. She said that more than once, because I think she knows that these work assignments are going beyond the boundaries of
Sure.
what she knows she needs in her own life.
Sure. Well, and I think what that does is that creates burnout. And I want to preface, there are times and seasons, like for instance, if you're a single mom and you're having to do everything, or a single dad and you're having to do everything, there may be times and seasons that are going to have a little less margin than others. But even in those, how do I create a margin that is doable? And whether it is, when you talk about on Saturday, you're still doing things that need to get done that maybe aren't fun things, but you're also saying, okay, but this other time that is going to be my fun time, nothing comes in front of that. It's not like, I think if you find that there's not enough spaces on your calendar for all the things you need to do, that's a good sign that you need to reduce some of the things that you're doing.
Right. And I'll tell you what, if I weren't doing a time blocking on, let's say, a Saturday, then I would do things that, laundry or go run to the grocery store or whatever. But if I had not time blocked, a lot of my mental time then,
Right.
even binge watching Netflix, would be playing on my mind going, you really need to fill in the blank. You really need to, and it's just,
Right.
I'm having this battle in my mind of you really should be fill in the blank.
But that's where I go back to saying people think margins will take time away from us, but it will actually give us time. It will give us the time that when we are doing something in margin, we can enjoy it and not feel guilty. We can be doing it wholeheartedly, and we're not wondering, what should I be doing? I should be doing something different.
Okay, so I gave my personal example of intentional living. That's how I time block on my weekends. We're going to take a break, though, and then when we come back, I want to ask Kim for her personal example of living life intentionally and creating margin. Plus, we're going to find out how we can have this brand new. You walked in and
Hot off the press.
You surprised me because I didn't think we were even going to have a PDF today, and it is way beyond that. You have created a free workbook and implementation guide. There are no but if you do this, you're going to be getting 500 emails a day, because nobody wants that scam. It's like,
No.
oh no, that is so not what
I'm
this is
lucky
about.
to send one email a month.
So we'll tell you about this free workbook and implementation guide, which covers the items that we have been discussing on this very special therapy session on the Oasis Roadshow with Kim Har and yours truly, David Warren. Back for the wrap-up after this. I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. Well, Kim, what do you think of this topic as a therapy topic?
You know, let me tell you, I actually chose this topic because it's something that I need. And it's good for me to refresh my mind and hold myself accountable on a regular basis. So I actually did this for me.
This would be a good book number two for you when your first book comes out. I mean, after you've
Let's
promoted
create
it.
some margin first.
We will, but this is a great topic.
Yeah.
And I could see you doing a book on this.
Sure.
Intentional living, creating margin in your life. And so everybody get a pen and paper handy. We're going to tell you how to get this free workbook and implementation guide. Again, no, it is free.
There's no hidden costs.
No hidden costs.
No spam.
No spam. You won't get a bunch of emails. So I like to say that because almost everything comes
Sure.
with, some sort of hitch to it.
Sure.
But okay, I teased that I would be asking you for a personal example of how you have learned to live intentionally, and that would be by creating margin in your life. So the microphone is yours.
Well, I tell you, my biggest place I need margin is with work-life balance because I am forever, as a therapist, I am watching the clock all the time. I need to have someone in by this time, out by this time, the next person in and out. And so for me, one of the things that I do is I've created, and I am still creating and developing, where this year I've given myself permission to actually stop work an hour earlier than I normally did. Where I've built in, I need that time at the end of the day just to decompress. In the mornings, I get to work 30 minutes ahead of time so that I can get ready for the day where I'm not rushed. On Fridays, I take my Fridays, I time block that where that is actually my free day. And if my husband asks me, what are you going to do today? My answer is usually, I don't know. I haven't decided what I want to do today. It's more of a free day. And on that, now I do other things that are necessities with home life, but I make sure that in that free time, I incorporate the things that are most important to me is my family, my faith. I make sure I've got time for reading my Bible and praying, but my family, and with my family this year, I've been very intentional with saying, okay, who in my family? So my husband's number one. So how much time can I make sure that I am dedicating to very meaningful time with him, intentional. So we're not just sitting watching TV together, but we're actually building our relationship. My mom and dad, my mom and dad are older, and we never want to take for granted how long we have our family. And so it's how do I want to make that time count? And for me, that does fill my cup. So I'm doing that on some of my free time because it's a cup filler for me. So at the end of the day, I don't bring my work home. I try not to do things like charting notes or I look at my calendar, and I am very, very cognizant of my calendar. Mm-hmm. My husband knows if he says, hey, in fact, last night, he said, his kids wanted to plan a trip like in, I don't know, this summer. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I realize you don't have your calendar. Mm-hmm. Because I want to be able to consult my calendar, see where I've got time, so I'm not overcommitting, I'm not double booking, and it can be something that I look forward to.
Yes, and I threaten you every year that you're not allowed to take vacation during support days.
That's right. But I write that on my calendar. I write that down because that is something that's important to me. And so maybe if there was a family emergency.
Of course. I'm referring to
important.
Our Oasis support days every
Yes.
March and September, our fundraising times, because we're non-commercial Christian radio. So, we work ahead. We have those blocked out. I have to. It's my job.
Right.
But you volunteer your time, but you're being intentional because this is important to you.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of my core values is having integrity and being a person of my word. And I think that we've been doing this so long that when I say I'm going to be there, you don't have to question that.
No, you do not. I mean, something is, I don't even want to speak that out. You know where I was going with that. You're always on time. You're early, as a matter of fact.
I am.
All right. So tell us about this free Intentional Living, Creating Margin in Your Life workbook and implementation guide.
Yeah, it is a 12-page workbook, and it is divided up into 5 different sections. The first section is aligning your life with your core values, so know what's important to you. Section 2 is identifying and eliminating time wasters. Again, we need to know what they are. How do we get rid of them? Section 3 is weekly planning for margin creation. Section 4 is building and maintaining healthy boundaries. What are they? Where do I need them? And then Section 5 is replenishing your energy with rest. The very last page is actually some prayer prompts. And those prayer prompts let me just maybe get one right here and read just a couple of them to you.
While you're looking for that, let me mention that this workbook and implementation guide, all you need to do is ask for Intentional Living or the workbook on that, and she will know what to send you because we have various PDFs that we talk about from time to time. So the web address, actually it's kim@there'shopehere.com.
Right.
That's the email address where you simply say, hey, please send me the
workbook.
The workbook on intentional living.
Yep.
Because you might be doing more workbooks, my friend.
That's
you
true.
never know.
That's true.
All right. So kim@there'shopehere.com. That's also the website address where you can check out more about today's very special guest and therapist, Kim Har.
Right. Okay, so the prayer prompts, there's some morning prayers. There's a clarity prayer that says, Lord, clear my mind of confusion and help me see your priorities for today. There's a wisdom prayer that says, Father, grant me wisdom to distinguish between the urgent and the important. There's a strength prayer that says, Holy Spirit, empower me to maintain healthy boundaries today. There's an example of evening prayers, which is a prayer of reflection. Lord, show me where I rushed past your presence today. There's a release prayer that says, Father, I release the burden of, and then you tell him what that concern is. Help me to release it to you. And then there's a rest prayer. And that is, Jesus, help me to rest in your sufficiency rather than my striving.
I love that. Did you write all that?
I did.
That's inspired.
Well, thank you.
And inspiring. And I mean it. I'm not just saying it. I think this would be a really good book when it's time and when you're fully rested. I totally see you doing a book on this.
All right.
I mean, because think about it. You usually have a PDF.
I do.
This is a workbook. So there's something special about this. You need it. I need it. Our listeners need it. Again, how can people get it?
Send me an email at kim@there'shopehere.com and just ask for the Intentional Living Workbook.
Okay. Well, what do you think about today's program? How did we do?
I think we did good.
Okay.
I think we did good.
All right. So I need to look for another ride to work, not you.
That's right. I'm really sorry. No.
You don't have to apologize. You didn't commit to it to start with.
You know what? Nothing would actually thrill me more than us driving to work together in the mornings. I think we'd have a blast.
Well, we would, but we do you go that way and I go this way.
Although I might be a little louder in the mornings than you are.
I don't know. I'm a morning person. But the good thing is we intersect at about this time each month here on the Road Show. Kim Har, she's a delight. Again, she's a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. Her website, there'shopehere.com. And if you were grabbing a pencil earlier, the email address once again to get this free workbook and implementation guide on intentional living is
Kim@there'shopehere.com.
All right, I'm David Warren.
And I'm Kim Har.
And it's been
another great Road Show.
You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.